Um, hey everybody, it's John Durgin here with co-host Gage Greenwood. This is the first episode ever of the Horror Hangout, and we have none other than Nick Roberts as our first guest. It just seemed fitting, and figured we'd carry our group text over to some video here. So,
yeah, I mean, what better way to start than with the person you talk to every single day of the week? So why not?
Yeah. Well, plus you also have probably the biggest Crystal Lake release yet coming out here in the next week and a half or so, 9 days. So it's a good time to chat.
Yeah, it's getting more and more insane the closer I get to the actual official release date. Like I did the signed copies and I sent those out. And I always feel bad for bitching about having to do book mail because the inverse of that is not selling books. But staying up late on a work day to mail out a ton of books, so it physically sucks. But it's a good problem to have, and it's so rewarding. Like 2 or 3 days later, starting to see people post about it that they got their book mail and they're excited to read it and all that. But yeah, when Joe messaged me this morning and said that it was already the highest grossing pre-sale that Crystal Lake has ever had, it sort of blew my mind.
That's insane. I can't even believe that. I mean, because book one was their bestseller to date, so I guess it makes sense that the sequel would be the best pre-seller to date. Seems fitting.
Yeah. How did that, like, for you? You're a school teacher during the day and a family man at night, and then you wrote Anathema, and then am I right in saying that the Exorcist House was like 2 years later when you published that one?
Well, I wrote them. Yeah, publishing was, yeah. Because Anathema came out at the beginning of 2020, right during right when COVID happened, and it completely like derailed my release and all the plans I had for promotion. So, also what happened is, I'm a teacher, so when COVID rolled around, I started working from home, and I had more flexibility with being able to record lessons and do things like that. So and obviously I wasn't driving anywhere, so I had more time to write, during the weekdays than just being limited to weekends. And I ended up writing kind of the Exorcist House right after Anathema came out because I wrote it over the summer of 20, like kind of spring summer ish of 2020. And yeah, it didn't come out for a while because I sent it to Joe at Crystal Lake, and I didn't know Joe at the time. I didn't know anybody. And the name Crystal Lake caught my attention for obvious reasons. And I didn't know like how big of a publishing house they were. I didn't know if they were up there with like a cemetery dance or like a tour. I don't even think back then I knew what Tour Night Fire was, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But like the only non-mainstream publisher I'd heard of at that point in my underread life was Cemetery Dance. But I knew the name Crystal Lake from the movies, and I was like, okay, I'll submit here. And I remember he messaged me back and said, it's like, I really like this story, and it was called Pandemonium at the time. It wasn't called The Exorcist House. And at the opening of the book, it has the definition for pandemonium, and I didn't choose it because of the word meaning like chaos. I had read Dante's Inferno and Paradise Lost in the Bible before I wrote The Exorcist House. So I knew that Pandemonium was the capital city of hell, and I really wanted those three definitions right there at the beginning of the book. So I was like, yeah, I'm just going to call it Pandemonium, without realizing that there are 1,000 books called Pandemonium. And anyway, so Joe picked up on it rather quickly. He said, I love the story and I want to publish it, but here's the thing. I don't have a spot for it until almost like a year and a half later, like May 2022. And you guys are authors, and as soon as I hit like the last period or right the end, I want the world to see it. I want feedback, and the thought of having to sit on it for that long, it was a hard decision, but in the end, I was like, I really like Crystal Lake, and the limited interactions I had with Joe at the time. And I went on their website and I saw that the kind of books that they were releasing. I saw that they had quotes from Jack Ketchum website, and right before it came out, they won the Stoker for I think it's Specialty Press or something like that is the official title. So I felt like I was in really good hands by the time the book officially came out, and yeah, it was worth the wait.
Yeah. I don't think I realized it was done that long before you put it out. Yeah, to your point, like as soon as, especially when we do a lot of hybrid self-publishing using presses, like when we self-publish, it's like the trigger finger on publish is right there, just waiting to happen. So, but yeah, that's wild. And I don't think I never knew the first name of it. I don't think you said that in the past to me. If you did, I wasn't listening to, but but no, Gage and I both, actually Gage, I don't know if you have read it full yet. I've read it all the way through. I think it's your best book yet. So yeah, Genesis.
I haven't. No, I haven't yet. Sorry.
At this point, you might as well wait for the paperback. That's it's I think it's Nick's best book yet. So
thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I know we always feel that way, right? It's our newest release. It's we're developed in our writing skills and storytelling and all that, but just from the prologue, which is, I text you as soon as I read it. I picked up on the inspirations. I don't know what I'm allowed to say and whatnot, but
talk about it.
Yeah, I was like, I'm getting heavy Exorcist 3 vibes off this prologue, and he said, "Yep, that's what I'm going for." And it's freaking a creepy prologue for sure. So, but then just how it ties into the story, going back and forth in time, with Merle back in the early days, and just seeing how it all ties together. And that actually was one of the first questions I had. Is I'm doing it myself in a book, so for me, it's a pain in the ass. But for you, how difficult was that to have the two timelines, knowing that they eventually had to merge together and like make one story? Like, how difficult is that?
Well, the reason I chose that was because I think the best sequel in any medium is The Godfather 2, and the structure of that movie, I completely stole that, of having the rise of Vito Corleone, played by Robert De Niro, and then it cuts to present day Michael Corleone, played by Al Pacino, also on a similar rise or demise, however you want to look at it. But the cutting back and forth in that movie isn't arbitrary. They parallel each other. Like each scene almost bleeds into the next one. And I was like, if I had no desire to write a sequel, so I said, if I could pull off something like that, like trying to achieve that structure is what intrigued me more so than the actual story. And as far as like being intimidated about writing two timelines and having them come together, writing what happens after the events of the Exorcist house was easier, much easier than writing what happens in the past, because every little decision, every piece of information that Merle gets will affect and inform what he did in the book that I already wrote. And I had to keep that in mind at all times. And, I had to, if he believed a certain thing in this book, I had to explain why he started to question it or ended up the way he did in the Exorcist house. So that part was arduous and felt like work, because I had my actual book that I had to constantly refer back to and it got to be a pain at times, but I never really had any intention of leading straight up until where the Exorcist house starts. So because I felt like that was going to be too much. I felt like he has too much of a story, and I could write 5 other books about the cases he investigated prior to the Exorcist house. So I kind of wanted to just highlight this one case that really affected him and that could still have haunting, lingering effects on the Hill family in the the latter half of the timeline.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think for me, where prequels go wrong is, to your point, when it's just like it could be any case. Like it's just showing the character back in time. Like you could do anything, but when it really works, it's when it essentially leads into the current plot. So that was my favorite part about it, just how it all came together with the main antagonist. And how it all fits together in the climax. It's chef's kiss. So
Thank you.
yeah.
I wrote that with a lot of maybe I wouldn't even say faith in myself, because I didn't have that at the time when I started writing it. That it would tie together. So I guess I just had blissful ignorance by pantsing that book, and that's why it was so stressful on me. And by the time I realized how I could connect it, that's when I was like, okay, now I can relax. Now I can go back and tweak some things and have some fun. And that was kind of my mantra. Anytime I got really down on myself or like worried about the structure, I said, have fun. That's what people liked about the first one. It was scary. Do something scary. So like anytime I'm like getting fed up with writing, I always take it back to that. Just be scary, have fun. So I'm doing that with this Anathema book that I'm writing right now. I'm facing similar writer issues, and I have to kind of psych myself up and say, not everybody gets to do this. You've always wanted to do this. Have fun with it, or else don't do it.
Speaking of, saying that you whenever you needed to stop and say, all right, I'm gonna make something scary happen here. I've told you before that, with the exception of Felix Blackwell's Stolen Tongues, Mean Spirited is the only other book that like messed with me. Like I'd go out for my cigarettes at night and feel uncomfortable. And I think that's a common compliment I hear from your readers, just how much you terrify them. And there's always sort of specific scenes in your books that people have different ones, but people have specific things that really like haunt them. Do you have a specific approach that you go towards when you're writing a scene and saying like, all right, how can I mess with people here? Or does it just come naturally?
I have a natural barometer that is most of the time is right. I completely missed the mark on one part of Mean Spirited, that I did not anticipate the whole thing with the panda taking off. So that didn't send chills up my spine when I wrote about that little stuffed panda. But there is one scene in there, I was writing and I was visualizing it in my head, and I was sort of watching the movie play and just writing it, and then all of a sudden I saw something happen in my mind in the house. I was in Matt's position while I was writing that from his perspective, and I saw that happen, and it sent like a chill over me, and I was like, that's creepy as shit. Because like when I see that stuff in movies, that like it's not a cheap jump scare. It's almost like one of those ones where, kind of like Hereditary, at the end of Hereditary, where you see Toni Collette slowly fade from darkness into light, and she's clinging to the ceiling in the corner, and she's been there in the frame the whole time and you didn't even notice. Like that kind of like frame analysis scare is what I like. So when I'll stop talking around the jump scare. It's when the kid crawls on the ceiling, and that's kind of like what really creeped me out when I was writing it.
Yeah, me too.
So I've gotten called out, like, as people are reading it. Some people will like post on Goodreads or on Facebook. They'll be like, "I just read this scene," or they'll message me and cuss me out for scaring them with that one scene. But yeah. So like, anytime I try to make something scary, I can do it with atmosphere and mood. Okay, so I know how to build like a spooky scenario to where like in the story 1408 or the movie 1408, we know more about the room. By the time, like, we know so much about that haunted room by the time John Cusack or Mike Enslin in the short story walks into the room, we're terrified of the room. So I have faith that I can establish a spooky atmosphere. Whether or not it's scary once we get in there, like, I don't have a formula for that. If it happens, it happens. And there are a couple times in the Exorcist House Genesis where I thought it would happen for me, and it didn't. And I'm eager to see what people respond to, what people think are creepy scenes in that book, and if I ruffle any feathers this time around.
Is it going to be just like a room full of pandas? You're like, you like the pandas, everybody? You're getting pandas.
It doesn't make sense for the plot, but we're doing it. Yeah, pandemonium. There you go. Oh man. Oh no, there's multiple scenes in Genesis that did that. So I can't wait to see. I mean, we're already seeing the early recipients of the paperbacks, which I missed out on. Kind of pissed about, but like seeing their reactions to the book and the ARC readers and whatnot. So I think it's safe to say that I wasn't the only one that felt a certain way about the book. So but I don't want to keep kissing your ass during this whole show. I know you're the guest, but you are our friend as well, and we don't talk this nice in our text. So
you started this with like, this is our first episode, and it's gonna be just like, with the three of us text every day. And I'm like, well, if we talk like we text every day, it's gonna be our last episode too.
Yeah. Oh, we could play a game. I could read the last text that was said and see. No, I don't want to get in trouble. But I had some random questions I came up with while I was on the toilet today. And
that's where all genius comes from.
The first one was, how many horror masks do you own? Because I feel like every video you make, you're wearing a different video.
Yeah, about 7 years ago, I think. I started, because it was when Cora was born. We started like trick-or-treating really as a family. Like I have a 15-year-old stepson, and we'd always would just like throw on like an old scary mask I had from my childhood. And so then like we had this like block of time where we weren't really trick-or-treating or like going all out. And then Cora was born, and Amy wanted to do like these elaborate, like all matching costumes. And I was like so not about it. The only time I conceded was when I was Jon Snow and she was Khaleesi, and Cora was in a wagon and she was a little dragon that Amy was dragging around. And the only reason I conceded was because Amy got to dress like Khaleesi, and we got to play some Game of Thrones. But so that was fun. But I think I'm probably about 7, and the reason I do is because every Halloween after that, I have a tradition now where I buy a Halloween mask that's like an official replica. It's not just like, a cheap piece of crap. Like, I'll order something from either a studio or at least Trick or Treat Studios, and it's just like my annual treat. The one I don't have that I've yet to find a really good one is Pinhead, and I feel like that would be too elaborate for a regular mask. Like I feel like you'd need like a faceplate and then like a bald cap and then like
Otherwise, the nails are just gonna be like all flimsy, like limp
yeah,
lips.
Yeah.
it would look weird.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Cora, I was going to also ask, how old is Jack going to be before you start forcing him into child labor like Cora? Have you already come up with a schedule?
So I don't know. I don't know how I can capitalize on Jack at this age. I think Cora kind of got into it because of when I first got on TikTok. I don't think I was even like promoting author stuff. I was just trying to scare my family and record it. And Cora was always like very entertaining and very fun to scare. And she just kind of, as soon as she got immune to it rather quickly, like the masks and everything. So I realized that we're kind of kindred spirits, and we both like scary stuff. So she sees me mailing these books out. She knows when I'm writing that Daddy is working, that I'm not avoiding her, and she wanted to be a part of the process. And I told her from day one, if there's ever a time where I have to like force you to fulfill an order or something, like this ends. I'm not gonna like beg you to do this. This is like your thing. And she loves doing it. She does her YouTube book club channel, and
That's
she's
awesome.
been slacking on that for a while, but like I don't know, Jack, I feel like he's gonna be more Amy at this point. He'll be the lighter side of the family. Cora's my dark little apprentice.
Yeah, I feel like you're going to be the next big author for our generation, and your books are going to get turned into movies. And I'm holding on to the fact that I bought Cora's last bookmark to use against you when you get famous. Like, come on, man, you owe me.
That's true. You did get the last one. I got the second to last one, so
Yeah.
it's not as valuable, I guess.
Well,
To be fair, though, you bought the second to last one, and then you told me you bought the second to last one, so I ran over and bought the last one.
well, to be super fair, I had to say, "Hey guys, these are the last 2 bookmarks that I have to sell before I can FaceTime Cora and tell her she's sold out."
So and we were played, is what you're saying.
And then John whips out a 5, and then Gage comes over and, well, I guess I got to do it too.
That's not what I said.
Oh man. Yeah. So, I don't know. I think people are going to expect some Jack bookmarks at some point, but I did want to ask for Joe, our lovely publisher here at Crystal Lake. He asked, "What scares you?" I was going to respond to him. It would be a missed royalty payment, but I didn't. I'm not in with Joe yet, like you are, so I didn't know how he would take that. But what scares Nick Roberts?
So I don't get scared by traditional things. Like I'm not. I mean, I don't think most adults anymore get scared of the dark or anything like that. But I remember early on in my childhood, I used to be terrified of the dark. I'd turn off the light and take off running until I made it to the next lit room. And if you've read Dead End Tunnel, the layout of that house is identical to my childhood home. If you were like a bird's eye view looking down on it, it's the shape of a U. And I had a whole wing to myself. So when the lights went out in that wing, it was just this giant dark room, and it was surrounded by windows. So it was like the opening of Scream, basically. And I remember every time I had to leave my room, I would have to run and I just didn't like it. And one day I consciously remember this to this day. I said, I'm going to turn off the light and I'm going to sit in here. And this sounds like a psychopath type shit. I said, and I'm going to sit in here and I'm going to be the scary thing that's in the dark. I'm going to become the scary thing in the dark. And that's literally what I did. I turned off the light and I walked to the center of the room and I sat there. And then like my eyes adjusted to the darkness. I looked around. I realized there wasn't anything scary about it. And I felt like serene, like at peace. And
Yeah.
I think that was the birth of my psychosis.
This is like your live confession that you're Batman.
Oh, see, I was thinking it was the Jeffrey Dahmer origin story, Batman.
Now, if you want the honest, boring answer, what terrifies me is the thought of being stuck in a life full of discontentment and not being able to do what I love and not having the people that I love around me anymore. You know, it's those things that I think every adult and parent and spouse fears at times. And, you know, I don't know, that's kind of a deep question that I want to give an entertaining answer for. Like Stephen King, he has that bullshit generic. He's even said it's a bullshit generic answer that he's scared of something that'll grab his ankle when it's hanging off the side of the bed. But yeah, it's just, I guess my biggest fear is, I don't want to say not making it as an author, but because I feel like I've already done just having someone read a book and say that it changed their life or it entertained them or it got them through a dark time, man, that's made everything I've ever done worth it. So if my writing ended today, like, you know, I would still feel content that I was able to tell an entertaining story. So I don't know. I've rambled about this answer long enough.
No, I mean, think about it. You've inspired Gage to get a Nick Roberts tattoo. That's what you've done with your career. So.
And that's what I fear the most. This upcoming tattoo I have to get.
Yeah.
You get to get with your banner.
Yeah. So that's the thing is I got to go get I made this deal with your fans. This Faustian devil, the devil of a deal. But I feel like I didn't realize that it was actually going to cost me 2 tattoos because I can't get Nick Roberts' tattoo before I get one of my own. So I have to go get my own logo. And then, so I was thinking what I'll do for that is like come up with 3 ideas and then I'll go back to your page and let your fans decide what my tattoo is going to be. I'm only going to get to come up with the 3 ideas.
You get to come up with the 3 ideas, though. We can't say the tramp stamp is a real thing that is one of the options.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, you know what the options will be if I just let them run wild.
Yeah.
Get Nick's face on your face, you know.
And we've talked about this offline. There's going to be some live footage of this, like when it happens. Like it has to. So
yeah. I'm gonna. I mean, obviously, it's gonna. Got to make sure that the tattoo artist is cool with that, but yeah, I'm gonna record it live and put it on my Patreon, and and curse Nick the entire time.
Yeah, that'll break some streaming records, I think.
I told you I had the image in my mind already of like a teenage girl laying on her belly on her bed with her legs crossed and she's got her little phone in front of her face and you're live streaming to your fans as you're getting whatever tattooed on your back. It just makes me giddy thinking about it. If there's anyone like I want to have a running commentary of a moment like that, it would be you.
I feel like I gotta like pay for you guys to travel to like be in the room for it.
I'm not too far from you.
Yeah, you can do it.
But yeah,
so I think for anyone listening who doesn't know the story, Nick Roberts is the more popular of the two of us, and my short story collection just came out, and I was like close to getting the little bestseller banner. And so I went to his group and told them, if you guys get me that bestseller banner by Wednesday, I'll get a Nick Roberts inspired tattoo. And I got the banner in like 5 hours. they were like, yeah, you're definitely getting this. And they were commenting with some wild ideas. A lot of tramp stamps. They definitely want a Nick Roberts.
Yeah.
Well, I started that. I said I wanted the Stay Spooky tramp stamp. So, but
I was thinking of it. Yeah, I just thought of one. A panda bear around his belly button. Like the belly button's gonna be part of it somehow. I don't know what part of the body, but could be the butthole. It could be a bent over panda. Anyways,
I should just get John Durgin's a tattoo of John Durgin, and no one will know the difference.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah. Which now that we're on camera together, Gage, like, is it really that similar, or is it's really that we have beards and we're like both about the same height? That's literally it, to me at least. I don't know, but
yeah, I would say that's it.
Yeah.
All right. Not that I care. Not saying Nick's a bad looking dude, but it's just when people say that, I'm just like, man, I don't see it. But it's a running joke. So if you all want to buy my books and think that I'm Nick Roberts' pen name, that's cool too. I'll take it. But
I feel like I shot myself short though. Like I should have, if I knew they were going to get it that quickly, I should have been like, get me to like a 5,000 rank, or you know what I mean? Like push it up a little bit more.
Well,
because now I got to like double down if I want to get higher, right? I'm like, get me into the 5,000 ranks, and I'll get an entire sleeve of Nick inspired.
I think my wife would divorce me if I got a Nick Roberts sleeve. I don't have any ink, so she definitely would, because if my first tattoo is a sleeve of just Nick Roberts inspired, art, that would be kind of weird. But
I do have plans for sleeves on both my arms, and one of them is like going to be a very cohesive picture that's going to have this whole story that it's telling, and the other one I just want to be like completely different artists all the time, and just like a mishmash of pop culture stuff that's like meant something to me at one point in time, because I feel like if in 50 years I'm embarrassed by a movie that I liked, it does, like, still having that ink, it's almost like a timeline, it's like just telling the things you liked at certain points. So having a Nick inspired tattoo on here is fine with me, because I am a fan of his books.
Yeah,
well, I think the concept of your plan of tattoos is just it so encapsulates your writing. Anyway,
cohesive story on one side and then nonsense on the other.
I'm picturing like the Winters saga on this side, all in that same art, and then I'm picturing like the On a Clear Day and Levitating and Bunker Dogs. Well, Bunker Dogs is the same artist as Winter's Myths, right? And Winter's Legacy.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So anyway, man, I read the first story of Levitating the night it came out, and what I wanted to ask you was, were those jokes actually? Did you actually do those jokes, or were they part of your act? Because I laughed my ass off at a couple of those shows.
They were, yeah.
What was the really dark one? That you said whenever the character says whenever he first gets on stage.
I've been really depressed lately.
I became a cutter.
I'm so depressed I became a cutter. But the thing is, I don't like pain, so I cut other people instead. Yeah.
Oh man, I was dying.
And then you'd always like look for that one person in the front row who looked like they could take it a little bit, and then you'd like do like a little slash and be like, "Come here, fucker!" Like just slash at them when you say it.
Oh, I don't think. I mean, I've said this in interviews before, like how we became friends or whatever, but I don't know if I've ever said it on camera. So, Nick and I both. So Exorcist House came out 2022. A month after that, The Cursed Among Us came out, and at the time, so like when I was looking for cover artists, Matt Seth Barnes was referred to me by someone. I went on his website. I followed him on Twitter, saw that he tweeted out the Exorcist House cover. I'm like, well, that looks cool. What's the synopsis? I read about it. So I bought the book solely because it was the same cover artist and the story sounded cool. And then I read it and I was like, holy shit, that book's awesome. So I reached out to Nick to have him come on my old podcast. And then the rest is history. Then I was like, dude, you got to get into books of horror. Like, they're going to eat this shit up. Like, they're going to love this book. And then
that was your fault.
That was my fault. Sorry.
Nick Roberts kicked my ass in the brawl last year. I might have made it farther, but you ruined it for me, John.
I did. Well, and at that point, so Nick and I talked, and then I had a text with Felix, and then I found out Nick and Felix were talking. So I'm like, well, this is stupid. So then we kind of just morphed into a three-way group text. And then Gage found out and begged to be part of it.
No. I was not talking. I was not talking to Felix at all. You were the go-to between Felix and I.
Yeah, and I thought I got us together.
Yeah, I never talked one-on-one with Felix at all. I remember you messaged me and said you sent me a screenshot that Felix said for you to tell me that he had mentioned us, or no, he didn't mention you. He mentioned me and like Volpe. It was me and Volpe on like a Sirius XM podcast. Okay, yeah. And he called us geniuses. And I remember he said, you were like, come on, man. I'm the one who like introduced him. Like, throw me a bone. You can throw my name in there. So then, that's how we, it was the three of us. And then, of course, Sammy was it Gage or Sammy first?
No, Gage was last. He begged to come in when he found out we had a group text. And we were like, fine. No,
that's actually not far from the truth. It was like Felix made a post and he said or a comment on something where he said something about like something Nick said in a text conversation, and I was like, you assholes have a text conversation and I'm not in it. And then like an hour later he invited me in and I was like, oh man, I just really kind of like wormed my way into that conversation.
Hey, we had to vote you in. You know the policy, so
now I do. Now I do. Well, because let me tell you, like half of the authors watching this, we had a conversation about inviting you in, and we said no. I'm kidding.
I think like anytime we've invited someone, it's always been Felix who initiated it.
Yeah,
I feel like didn't like he.
I think he did start it between like because he knew that I talked to you and then you guys started talking. I don't remember, but anyways,
I never talked to Felix until you put me in a group chat with him.
Okay, so it was me then, but I'm pretty sure it was his idea to morph everybody together,
and it was his idea to bring in Sammy, and then I think Gage, and I don't know. I mean, for a guy who is as like introverted. I don't even know if he's introverted. That's probably the wrong word to say about Felix, introverted. But for as private a guy as he is, it's intriguing that he wants to network so much with other like-minded authors and like-minded people in general. So that always intrigued me.
But it's just kind of wild because it's not like we've had someone come in and then kick them out because they didn't fit. Like it just like we knew the pieces that would fit, and the group text just kind of is what it is. It's has some legendary conversations, but yeah. So
and I just wanted to let people know. It's a cool group because it's got like sometimes I'm like crying laughing at some of the stuff you guys come up with, but then it's like this just wealth of knowledge sometimes too, where everyone's sharing what they're doing, what's going on, and you just learn so much from it. Like I think if you look at my Patreon, which came out before Nick's, and then Nick came out with his, and then mine just like changed to basically how Nick was structuring his, because I thought it was smart the way he did things.
Well, then I looked at both of your Patreons and said, well, what of each of these am I willing to do? And then I just made mine based off you two. And I think I looked at Volpe's too and just was like, all right, I would be willing to do this. There's no way I could do that. Like, how am I going to tier this together, basically? So, Yeah, no, there's a lot of knowledge, a lot of jokes, a lot of stuff that would get us canceled. If
and a lot of being there when we need each other, and it's like other people who aren't authors can't relate to certain things that we go through, and so when I've like vent about certain things related to writing to my wife or other people, like I can't imagine like what a crybaby or like how whiny I sound or like how narcissistic I sound. But talking with you guys about certain things and the trials and tribulations and successes, it's been very cathartic and rewarding. And I know Felix has said similar things. Having that outlet.
Yeah, I talk to you guys more than I talk to my real life friends, if that's how you would say it, I guess, meaning people that I associated with most of my life before this writing journey. Like I still talk to them, but like it's not every day conversations throughout the day. It's like here and there, so it would be kind of weird to get away from that. Sorry, my son's talking to me. He's about to lose a tooth. So
knock it out.
Do
it live.
The tooth fairy came for my daughter 2 nights ago. She lost her first tooth the night before school started.
And how
much? How much money?
Yeah,
$5 for the first tooth. I don't know. I feel like when I was a kid, the tooth fairy brought $1 no matter what. But
inflation has hit the tooth fairy.
Yeah, but my son also has a wiggly, and it's like hanging on by a thread. I'm like, just pull it out, man. Like he's such a wimp. My daughter was sitting there like twisting it and stuff, and she's 6. He's 10 and a half, and he's just like afraid to do anything to her. But anyways, I didn't mean to go off on a tangent. But so if there's any advice I could give to like up and coming writers that are just starting out, it's like find your people, like find your group. No, you can't come into our group text. But for real, like find your posse. I know there's other groups like what we have, that do the same thing. Like I know, and I have another group chat with Jay Bauer and John Lynch. Like it's
how dare you?
I mean, we could have them come in, but that's too many people. I'd rather sacrifice myself to 2 chats than have 7 people in one chat. That would just get ridiculous. It would be like muting one of those books of horror groups in the messenger. I love you, Book of Horror, but those group chats are out of control. Same with Gage's chat. I muted that. I do check that though. It's hard to keep up though. Like I start to go back to make sure, see if I missed anything, and I'm like, I missed all this. Like, unless they tagged me, they probably didn't say anything about me. So I'm just gonna pretend that I know what they were talking about. But
and it's like, sometimes I'll have somebody message me like separately, and they'll be like, "Hey man, like I've tagged you like 10 times today." I'm like, "Yeah, but there was like literally like 1,000 messages that I missed. I can't find it." Like there's, you try and like scroll up for more than a minute on the Facebook Messenger, and it's like, like you can't.
It tweaks out. That's the annoying thing. If you get tagged, you should be able to click on when you're unlocking your phone and bring you to a message. Like that's so annoying. But
and that's part of the reason why there are multiple reasons why I shut down my Patreon, but the new school year starting being the primary reason, and really wanting to hone in on my novels and not be sidetracked and by these obligations, because these people are paying for a service and a product, and I'm not going to be that guy who cashes in on that and not deliver. So like I take it very seriously. So if I'm going to devote that much energy, that's energy I'm taking away from my major projects, my passion projects. But one of the things I had a chat on my Patreon, and it never blew up like Gage's or anything, but I didn't utilize it until a lot later on, and I realized like I would love to start a Facebook group with these people, and that way I can still be connected with them and not have to worry about uploading a monthly interview with another author. Might not sound like a lot of work, but like if I'm interviewing Paul Tremblay, for example, I'm going to read, his most recent book. I'm going to come up with insightful questions. I'm not going to waste the man's time. And it would take me like 6 hours to come up with 10 questions to send him. And so like a monthly interview, a monthly installment of a short story or a novella, the daily updates, sending out boxes, and then the worst time of all is whenever I have a new release and I have people who are subscribing to the top tier and they get that new release for free. Not for free, but it's automatically they get it as part of their tier. I had 100 people at that spot at one point. So whenever a new book would come out, that's why, like in one of my contracts, I said I wanted 100 free books up front, and just to give to the Patreon people. Yeah. And packing and shipping all those is time, and so eliminating Patreon, it's a big, huge chunk of my monthly income that I've gotten accustomed to. But I created this Haunted Minds book club on Facebook, and I had such a good time at Books and Brews, and I love Books of Horror, the group, so much that I wanted it to not be Books of Horror, because Books of Horror is very regulated, and the admins and moderators 99% of the time do a fantastic job with that, especially with how many people and how many different personalities you have in there. They do a good job at keeping it drama free and about books, but I wanted my group, I did not want it to be a fan group or anything like that. I wanted it, of course, I invited my Patreon people first, letting them know I was leaving Patreon and, hey, come to this group. I wanted it to feel like the after party, like kind of like how Books and Brews did, where you can come in, talk about books, or you can post a funny meme still related to books, like try to stay on subject, a little less relaxed or a little more relaxed on self-promotion. I'm the only admin as of now, and within like a week there's like 2,500 people in that group, and I don't check it religiously, so I don't know what kind of chaos is happening, but so
there was a couple dick pics in there the other day. You might want to get back and no, I'm just kidding.
Well, that was me, so
speaking of your group,
I thought you were going to say something else.
I'm sorry. What?
No, I thought you were going to say something else.
Speaking of dick pics, let me be an admin and you'll have a lot more of them.
I've got a new tattoo.
Here's my Nick-inspired tattoo. It's the dick pic. So no, speaking of your group, before we recorded this podcast, I went in there and asked them if they had any questions for you. And I have like 5 questions for you, and we can do this like rapid fire if you want. You ready?
Yeah.
Kayla Kalicki, I apologize if I say names wrong, asked, what's your favorite book or story you've ever written and why?
Book or story?
Yeah.
It would probably be Devil in the Snow. It was a novella. It was more of a novella, kind of a long short story, about 13,000 words. I wrote that for Kevin Kennedy's Vampire Collection. And I hate vampire books. I can name like 4 that I love. It's just not my subgenre. And so I took it as a challenge. If I'm going to bash it, then I might as well step up and see if I can do it. And what happened was I wrote that story like shortly after my brother passed away. And there was a time in my life where I wasn't doing well, and I got sent to stay with him at an Air Force base in Alaska for 30 days and in the winter. and it was such an interesting setting, and I wanted to tell that story of I wanted to honor sort of my brother in that moment as a veteran, as he was doing well in his life, and capture that moment and sort of immortalize it while also challenging myself into telling a scary vampire story. And I'm so pleased with how like the emotion and the horror kind of collided with that story. And so yeah, that's the one that personally like I'm most pleased with.
That's good to
I've
know,
read
because I
that
think that's
yet,
the
but
only story of yours I haven't read yet. So
yeah, I'm literally gonna go buy that as soon as.
yeah, I know. I You said that before too, and I completely forgot. But I'm pretty sure I've read all of your other stuff besides that one short story. So, yeah, that I do like vampires, and talk about it being in Alaska, it just makes me think 30 Days a Night, and
Yeah.
like I freaking love that movie so much.
Yeah.
So, no, I definitely got to check that out. Sorry, this is supposed to be rapid fire questions.
Yeah, well, like, there's no more rapid fire. Ruined. This is from Kathy Gordon. When you started crafting stories, how did you know what genre you wanted to write? I think that's a good question, because one thing I know about you is that you're like one of the, like I love your writing, and I love your writing for reviews too. You write really good reviews, and I feel like in your reviews, you can see that you're somebody who's very well read in a lot of different genres, a lot of the classics, things like that, and also a fan of a lot of genres with film as well. So that is, I like that question, and I want to know if you have any inclination to write for any other genre.
Wait, was that the question? Do I have like any desire to write outside of horror?
The question was, when you started crafting stories, how did you know what genre you wanted to write?
Because I started drawing monsters. It started with illustrations. So I started drawing these I don't know why I drew monsters. They just appealed to me. I think it was because I was born in October and I naturally looked forward to my birthday and associated it with Halloween and all that iconography. So I would draw monsters, and then I would draw cartoons of them talking to each other. And then I kind of like got sucked into Goosebumps covers. And yeah, I never had an option to go into any other genre. Some of my what you would, I guess, consider non-horror stories, they're still very dark in tone because they still like explore the darker side of human nature, and I just think it's more interesting. I'm not skilled enough as a writer yet to tell that uplifting story that I don't know would. I just I'm a one track mind when it comes to my tone, I guess.
I would say, I mean, that's kind of, I'm in the same mindset there. Like I think even 85-90% of the books I read are horror. Like I'll read thrillers here and there, some biographies, autobiographies, but like not reading like just like straight fiction. I don't know, like it's got to be horror or thriller or something that gets my like heart rate going. But
the only genre I would consider writing a full length novel in would be, I think, not necessarily a genre, but an author to himself. Well, a couple of them, because they kind of created their own genre, and I would basically just be mimicking them. And it's kind of like philosophical darkness is how I would describe Cormac McCarthy and Dennis Lehane. I would love to jump into either one of those types of storytelling, and that's high literature. And to try to even attempt that, I could fall on my face. But
I think you would do a really good job at Lee Haines kind of like noir style. I think you would pull that off really well.
Thank you. I think you would too. That's why I suggested. I was like, when are you going to write a Dennis Lehane story? Is it Lehane or Lehane? I've always said Lehane.
It's Lehane.
Lehane's probably correct. I always said Lehane, but I pronounce everything wrong. I'm like what's his Brian Regan? You know, he's where he talked about the guy said to him, "Hey, your jokes are funny, but you always pronounce everything wrong." And he's like, "Oh, everything? Well, isn't that the epitome of hyperbole?" So Angie Brill wants to know, who are your favorite horror writers and why is it me? No, I'm kidding. She didn't say that second part. She just the first part.
Well, I mean, you can see right here, I've got my whole shelf of Stephen King, so I have to give credit there. So Stephen King, Cormac McCarthy, Dennis Lehane, Tim O'Brien, and I think Clive Barker would be like the 5 like mainstream, like all timers. And then, well, and I want to throw in Bret Easton Ellis and Chuck Palahniuk because they got me through my drug years. Whenever I was, out there in the madness, I was still reading, but I was reading like very subversive and weird literature, and they kind of kept me in the literary world. So, but as far as like the indie horror scene, of course, you two, Felix Blackwell. I don't know if you can hear my son on the other side of my stepson on the other side of the wall. He's like basically having an orgasm winning a video game right now. As I'm trying to think of other people. Junji Ito, the manga guy. Yeah, I've been super into like his stuff here lately.
Oh, I just was going to show this signed copy of this to you.
Okay. Well, I guess if we're going to go ahead and do that, then.
Oh, I forgot you had that. That's what spent some point on that one. Oh, look at that! You got it in like a display case, even.
Yeah. That's one of 3 American Psychos.
3?
Yeah. So that's the Books a Million edition.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you meant there was only 3 prints of that copy, and you had one of them.
No. There's 200.
Yeah. Still, 200 is pretty cool.
Yeah. I got it from this rare bookshop, did an auction, and it came up, and he said they rarely come up. I mean, I think there's like 2 on eBay at all times, but they're super expensive because they're much lower in number. I forget what number I have. It might be like somewhere between like 80 and 100, I think. But yeah, once you get in like below 50, you're talking, I think, 5 digits.
Yeah,
wow,
that's wild.
That's crazy. Next question, and this is going to be a fun one, I think. Do the parents of your students know your work? Have any read it, and does that make it weird?
When I lived in West Virginia, of course, I grew up there, and then I taught high school there for 5 years. And, everyone knew who I was. They knew I was a person in recovery. Like, I thought that was going to be the weird thing, being a teacher and being a person in recovery and being like outspoken about it. So when people they always knew me as a horror writer. And when I finally started to sell books, they were like cheering me on. My superintendent of Kanawha County Schools had me send them a signed copy. So once that happened, no, I've never had any weird interactions with parents. If anything, it's been like positive. Like they've like wanted to either buy the book or they've already read it or what. But yeah, I can definitely see how like in this day and age that could go horribly wrong. And I get why some people would do like a pseudonym, especially if they're in like the public sector. But I've always been like, this is me, take it or leave it. I'm proud of my work. I don't have anything to hide from. So it's not like I'm, out there doing, I don't know, weird things.
Only thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but I think because I know a lot of teacher authors that use different names and for their writing. And I think you and I are along the same wavelength. We're just too damn selfish. Like, we want our names on the spines. Like, I grew up wanting to write books. Like, I wanted to see my name on a book. Like, it just wouldn't have felt the same if I was like, I can't think of a fake name, but
and it was, for me, it was always, I'm an author trying to make it in this world. I'm not a teacher trying to be an author. So like, that's how I always identified myself, as being a writer. And like, so it's just, I never had any inclination or even ever a thought to hide it. Even when I was writing as unapologetically grotesque as I could with Anathema, my first book, I never once considered, will a parent of a student think this is bad and not want me to teach their kid? So yeah, it's fortunately never come up. Who knows?
Julia Terry wants to know, what did you write your doctoral thesis on?
So whenever I got hired to be a teacher, because I had disclosed that I was a person in recovery, and because they do a background check and all that, as they should. You are in charge of children, so they're not just, hopefully they're not just going to grab anyone off the street and give them a teaching certificate. But I remember I got hired and they did the background check. They brought me into the state capitol, into this very intimidating interrogation room where I sat with the head of the West Virginia State Department of Education investigative team. And they basically did like a 2-hour interrogation slash, it started off as an interrogation and veered into an interview, which then veered into, I don't know if y'all just heard that. I don't know what just happened, but it went from an interrogation to an interview to them wanting to work with me on how to hire and recruit other teachers who have a history of substance use disorder. So like within that 2 hours, I went from the skeptical possible hire to them wanting to work with me and develop a program to get other teachers. So I went through that in my master's program. So for my dissertation, I wanted to explore the stigma associated with substance use disorder and the hiring of educators. And believe it or not, there are a ton of educators who have that history, whether it be alcoholism or addiction to pills or whatever, and make mistakes. And because of the nature of the profession, it's hard to get a second chance. So, the results of the study that I did shocked me at times with how sympathetic and empathetic people were. And, other times, it didn't shock me with people who have the firm stance of no one who has done what you've done in your past should ever be given a chance as a teacher. So, so that was my dissertation.
That's pretty wild. Was that the last question?
There's one more from Greenwood. He wants to know, how dare you? That was the last question.
Well, how dare you what? What is this fellow talking?
Overall, how dare you?
How dare you? Yeah. Well, we're past an hour. We said we were going to try to keep this an hour. I told you I used to host a show and we would go 2.5 hours because we just wouldn't shut up, which is a good thing. But I don't think people want to watch for 2 hours. Some might, but we should probably call it a night. But obviously, circle back to Exorcist House Genesis coming out next Friday, the 13th.
And if
Definitely.
you haven't read them, grab Anathema and the Exorcist House and Mean Spirited, Dead End Tunnel. Just absorb all of Nick's work because it's nonstop good across the board.
You forgot it comes to mind.
Yeah.
I'll just throw that one into. But
right back
yeah.
at both of you. You know, of course, you all know how. I mean, we're friends because we love each other's work. It's not because we have the most winning personalities.
Oh, I mean, I wouldn't go that far, but
Only me. Only
we at least have the same humor. So whether we have good personalities or not, at least we all think the same stuff's funny. But that was the cool thing about the whole beginning of this group that we have is it all started with the love of each other's work. So it wasn't like we're just kissing each other's ass for no reason. But
it really did too, because we were before I was invited in, and you guys started talking to each other over, admiration for each other, and then that's how I started to like John. I messaged you right away, and I was like, "Hey, Curse Among Us is awesome. How did you do it?" And then we just started talking about that. And same with Nick. I think the first time I messaged you, Nick, I might have been asking for a blurb. I don't even remember now, but
yeah, it was for Winter's Myths.
Yeah. Yep.
And I remember reading it, and I remember the roller coaster I went on, and then I remember messaging you. What did I say? Something about literary bukkake.
Yes.
Yes. I was like, I don't know where this is going, but I love it, and because there are very few books that I read that, like, I'm just along for the ride, no matter like what happens. Like, I'm in, and I have no idea what's happening. So like when that comes along, that's an experience that I like immediately wanted Gage to know. And the same with Felix. Whenever I read Stolen Tongues, like Gage, you said, I was so uneasy in my own house, just like walking around. And the first time I read Cursed Among Us and read the prologue, that's an image. The whole shovel face image is something I will carry with me forever and laugh about every time I think of it. So
laugh, huh? That's pretty sick.
Well, I compare it to Little Nicky.
I don't know if that's what I'm going for. Oh man. Well, I either have my kids chasing my dog around upstairs or someone broke into my house, so I should probably go check on that. But this is an awesome first episode, so
I gotta let my buddy know to stop breaking into your house.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he could take all of my valuables up there right now. I have so much. It's all my own books, It takes up half my house. But yeah, no, thanks for coming on. Gage, thanks for co-hosting. And yeah, we don't have a sign out yet.
I hope when this thing blows up that I am on the janky, like, completely unscripted episode that everyone starts out with, and then when they go to like you all interviewing Stephen Graham Jones and you're all polished with your intros and all this bullshit, they'll come back and be like, "This is the humble beginnings." So
yeah,
this is better than my first episode of my last podcast. Like, we freaking clueless.
Yeah, we gotta come up with our big outro. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. We'll think of it. We'll just steal from Nick, who's big. Stay spooky.
Well, yeah, it's not cool to copy that. That's his slogan. It shouldn't be copied.
Yes, I agree.
What about just hang in there? But then that sounds bad. So like, because it's the Horror Hangout,
What?
The name of the show, Horror Hangout. But then that sounds bad. So
hang in there, and then have the suicide helpline at the bottom.
Hang in there.
This came. Maybe we'll edit that out.
Or just give a trigger warning at the beginning, as much as never mind.
Yeah. No. Anyways, actually, I can't hit stop record. It's on you, Gage. You're the host here. So bye, everybody.
Right.
Hope you enjoyed.
We're gonna go out with hang in with Mr. Durgin.